Evelyn Carter stands drenched in a gleaming CarterTech hallway, shivering as a bucket of grimy mop water soaks her gray hair, dumped by Victor Grayson, a sneering white manager, while staff laugh. She's Lena, the new cleaner, or so they think. She's really the billionaire founder, undercover to test her son's reign. The sting of shame fuels her silent fury as she vows to crush Victor's cruelty, a battle that'll scar her forever. What happens when the prey turns predator? Before we dive in, tell us where you're watching from, and if you stand for justice, hit like and subscribe for more epic showdowns. Evelyn Carter stood in the shadow of CarterTech's towering glass facade, the Atlanta skyline glowing gold behind her as the sun dipped low on a muggy April evening. At 62, her knees creaked from decades of relentless hustle. Her hands bore faint scars from soldering circuits in a cramped garage lab where she'd birthed this biotech empire 35 years ago. Back then, she'd been a young black woman with nothing but a borrowed microscope and a dream, clawing her way up in a world that sneered at her ambition. Now her company's sleek logo pulsed neon against the dusk, a beacon of her triumph, worth billions, employing thousands across the globe. She'd handed the reins to her son Marcus 2 years back, trusting his Harvard-honed mind to carry her legacy. But lately, whispers had slithered through her network, old colleagues muttering about arrogance in the ranks, a culture souring under Marcus's watch. She couldn't sit idle while her life's work festered. So here she was, trading her tailored suits for a shapeless gray uniform, her silver-streaked hair tucked under a cheap wig, her sharp eyes dulled behind thick glasses. She was no longer Evelyn Carter, the titan dubbed the Helix Queen by industry insiders. Tonight, she was Lena, a stooped cleaner with a fake limp, stepping back into her own kingdom to root out the truth. The employee entrance buzzed her in with a cold click, the air inside heavy with the tang of antiseptic and ambition. Evelyn shuffled through the dim corridor, her worn sneakers squeaking on polished tile, her heart thudding with a cocktail of nerves and defiance. She hadn't felt this raw since her 20s, pitching to white investors who'd smirked at her pitch, their eyes saying she'd never amount to more than a maid. She'd proved them wrong, built CarterTech from scratch, turned their scorn into a fortune. But now, stepping into this gleaming labyrinth she'd designed, she felt invisible again. The night shift loomed ahead, her first test as Lena, and she steeled herself for whatever rot she'd uncover. The custodial locker room was a cramped cave of dented metal and flickering fluorescence. She swapped her coat for a stiff smock, pinned Lena to her chest, and gripped a mop like a scepter, her mind racing. Marcus didn't know she was here, couldn't know, not yet. She needed raw, unfiltered proof of what his leadership had wrought. Footsteps thundered closer, heavy and deliberate, snapping her from her thoughts. A hulking figure filled the doorway, his shadow swallowing the light. Victor Grayson, the operations supervisor, loomed at 6'3", his barrel chest straining. A crisp white shirt, his buzzed blonde hair glinting under the bulbs. His pale blue eyes raked over her, narrowing with a flicker of disdain as he clocked her dark skin, her hunched posture, the tremor she faked in her left leg. Evelyn knew his type instantly. Had faced dozens like him in boardrooms and backrooms, men who saw her race and age as a punchline. He crossed his meaty arms, his voice a low growl laced with contempt. "You the new one? Lena, right? Move it. We don't got all night for slow black hands like yours." The words hit her like a slap, sharp and sudden, slicing through the quiet. Her breath caught, a flare of rage igniting in her gut. But she swallowed it, dipped her head and muttered, "Yes, sir," her voice raspy with the strain of holding back. Victor snorted, a smug twist curling his lips as he tossed her a rag and pointed to a cart stacked with bleach and brushes. "Labs on 12 need scrubbing. Don't slack or you're out. I don't care how old you are. You pull your weight, or you're gone." He turned on his heel, his boots thudding away, leaving her alone with the echo of his barb. Evelyn clutched the rag, her knuckles whitening, her mind spinning. Slow, black hands. The phrase gnawed at her, a venomous jab that wasn't just personal, it was racial, a dagger aimed at her core. She'd built this place to defy men like him, to prove her brilliance, her worth. Yet here he was, a mid-level thug in her own house, spitting on her legacy with casual cruelty. Her empire was rotting, and she felt it in her bones, a sickness spreading from the top down. Marcus had let this happen, or worse, didn't see it. She'd raised him on stories of her fights, taught him to stand tall against bias, but now she wondered if he'd forgotten. She pushed the cart toward the elevator, its wheels squealing in protest, her fake limp dragging her pace. The ride up to the 12th floor was a silent ascent, the hum of the motor a backdrop to her churning thoughts. She'd seen CarterTech as a sanctuary once, a place where innovation trumped prejudice, where her blackness wasn't a liability but a badge of grit. Now it felt foreign, hostile, a machine grinding down the values she'd forged it with. The doors slid open, revealing a sprawling lab of gleaming steel and glass, microscopes humming, screens flickering with data. It should have been a shrine to her genius, but Victor's words tainted it, turned it into a battlefield. She started scrubbing, her mop cutting paths through invisible grime, her mind cataloging every detail. This was no janitor's gig. It was reconnaissance, a mission to map the decay. Halfway through the lab, a young tech in a white coat breezed past, his eyes skimming over her like she was furniture. No nod, no hello, just a blank stare that said she didn't register. Evelyn's chest tightened, a familiar ache from decades ago, when she'd been dismissed as a nobody in rooms full of white faces. She kept mopping, her movements mechanical, her anger simmering. Then Victor's voice boomed from the hall, barking at another cleaner, a wiry Latino man who flinched under the tirade. "Faster, Pablo, or I'll ship you back where you came from." The threat hung heavy, a blunt weapon of power, and Evelyn's grip on the mop tightened. This wasn't just about her. It was systemic, a culture of venom seeping through her company's veins. She'd seen enough tonight to know the whispers were true, but this was only the first shift, the first wound. Victor Grayson was a symptom, not the disease, and she'd dig until she found the source. Her shift stretched into the early hours, the clock ticking past midnight as she hauled trash bags and scoured sinks. Her back ached, her hands raw from bleach, but her resolve hardened with every swipe. Victor's jab replayed in her skull, slow black hands, a taunt that wasn't just cruel, it was a declaration of war. She'd faced worse in her climb, bank loans denied because of her skin, patents stolen by white rivals, but this was different. This was her turf, her creation, and some swaggering bully thought he could degrade her in it. She finished the lab, the floor shining like a mirror, and leaned against her cart, catching her breath. The building was quiet now, a tomb of steel and secrets, but she felt the pulse of something darker beneath it. Evelyn Carter wasn't here to clean, she was here to purge, and Victor's sneering face was the first target on her list. She shuffled back to the locker room, peeling off the smock, her disguise intact but her spirit ablaze. The night had cracked open a truth she couldn't unsee. Her empire wasn't just faltering, it was infested. Marcus might be blind to it, lost in spreadsheets and boardroom handshakes, but she wasn't. She'd built CarterTech to lift people up, not grind them down, and Victor's racism was a slap to that vision. Her son's leadership was on trial, and she was the judge, jury, and executioner if it came to that. She slipped out into the humid Atlanta dawn, the city waking around her, oblivious to the storm brewing in her chest. This was no retirement, stunt, no nostalgic lark. It was a reckoning, and she'd only just begun to peel back the rot. Victor Grayson had no idea who he'd just crossed, but he'd find out soon enough, and the fallout would shake CarterTech to its core. Evelyn Carter hunched over a gleaming lab floor on the 12th floor of CarterTech, the sharp scent of bleach stinging her nose as she dragged her mop in tight, furious arcs. It was her second night as Lena, the cleaner, and the Atlanta heat clung to her skin even at 10 p.m. The air thick with humidity seeping through the building's pristine shell. Her gray uniform stuck to her back, sweat beading under her cheap wig, but she kept scrubbing, the tiles already spotless under the harsh fluorescent glow. She'd built this lab with her own hands, metaphorically speaking, 35 years ago, a sanctuary of science where her biotech breakthroughs had rewritten medicine. Now it felt like a cage, her legacy mocked by the very people she'd empowered. Her knees ached, her 62-year-old body protesting, but her mind was a steel trap, cataloging every slight, every hint of the rot she'd come to unearth. She'd survived worse than sore joints, fought off sneering bankers and patent thieves, but this was personal. This was her house, and she'd be damned if she let it crumble. The lab door banged open, a gust of cool air slicing through the stillness, and Victor Grayson stormed in, his hulking frame filling the space like a thundercloud. His pale blue eyes glinted with malice, his buzzed blonde hair catching the light. As he strode toward her, a styrofoam cup of coffee sloshing in his meaty hand, Evelyn froze, her mop mid-swipe, her pulse kicking up as she braced for whatever venom he'd spit tonight. He stopped a foot away, towering over her, his lips curling into a sneer. "What's this? You call this clean, Lena? Looks like a pigsty, to me." Before she could respond, he tipped the cup, dark coffee grounds splattering across the floor she'd just polished, a gritty mess pooling at her feet. He laughed, a harsh bark that echoed off the steel counters, and folded his arms. "Guess your kind can't keep up with real work. Scrub it again and make it quick." Evelyn's blood boiled, her grip on the mop tightening until her knuckles throbbed, but she swallowed the fire, dipped her head, and rasped, "Yes, sir." Her voice trembled, not from fear, but from the effort of choking back 35 years of defiance. She knelt, the cold tile biting into her knees, and started wiping up the mess, the ground smearing into a sticky sludge. Victor didn't move, just stood there, his boots inches from her hands, watching with a smug tilt of his head. She finished, the floor gleaming again, and stood, her fake limp dragging as she straightened. She thought she'd proven something, shown grit he couldn't break, a quiet victory in her masquerade. Maybe this was enough to report to Marcus, a crack in the facade she could widen. She turned to grab her cart, her chest loosening with a flicker of pride, when heavy footsteps thudded behind her. Victor's shadow loomed again, and she spun just as he hefted a bulging trash bag from a bin by the door. "Not so fast, Lena," he growled, his voice dripping with glee. He ripped the bag open, and a cascade of rotting food, crumpled papers, and sour milk cartons rained down on her, the stench hitting her like a punch. Banana peels slapped her shoulders, a half-eaten sandwich smeared across her chest, and cold coffee dregs soaked her uniform, dripping down her legs. She staggered, the weight knocking her back a step, her wig slipping slightly as she fought to stay upright. Laughter erupted from the hall, two white lab techs peering in, their faces twisted with amusement as Victor waved them over. "Look at this! Old lady can't even dodge trash. Bet she's used to it though, huh?" The techs cackled, one snapping a photo with his phone, the flash blinding her for a split second. Evelyn stood there, trash clinging to her, the reek of decay choking her throat, her heart hammering with a fury she hadn't felt since her early days fighting for scraps. She wanted to rip off the wig, scream her name, and fire this bastard, on the spot, but she clenched her fists, nails digging into her palms, and kept her cover. She bent, picking slimy wrappers from her shoes, her mind racing. This wasn't just cruelty, it was racial. A public shaming rooted in the color of her skin, the age in her bones. She'd faced it before, but never here, never in the empire she'd carved out to defy it. The techs wandered off, still chuckling, and Victor lingered, his grin widening as he watched her scrape herself clean. She thought she'd endured the worst, that she could slip away and plan her next move, her evidence mounting. She was wrong. Victor stepped closer, his breath hot with coffee and spite, and leaned down until his face was level with hers. "You're still here, huh? Tough old bird. Let's see how tough." He hawked a thick glob of spit onto the floor, the wet splat landing inches from her sneakers, glistening under the lights. "Lick that up, Lena. Show me how good you are at cleaning." Her stomach lurched, bile rising in her throat, her vision blurring with rage. Lick it? This wasn't just humiliation, it was dehumanization, a line crossed into something vile and primal. She stared at the spit, her hands trembling, every fiber screaming to lunge at him, to claw that smirk off his face. But she couldn't, not yet. She dropped to her knees, rag in hand, and wiped it up, the damp fabric cold against her skin, her dignity shredding with each motion. Victor laughed again, a deep guttural sound that bounced off the walls and kicked her cart as he sauntered out, the clatter of metal ringing in her ears. "Better get used to it, Lena. This is your place now." The door slammed shut, leaving. Her alone in the lab, the silence pressing down like a weight. She stood, trash still stuck to her, the rag dripping in her fist, and stared at the spotless floor. She thought she could handle this, that a night or two would give her enough to fix Marcus's mess. But Victor's escalation, from coffee to trash to spit, told her this was no quick fix. This was war, a battle against a man who saw her as less than human, a stain to be scrubbed out. Her company wasn't just faltering, it was poisoned, and she was neck-deep in the venom. She limped to the sink, splashing water on her face, the cold shock snapping her back to focus. Her reflection in the steel panel showed a stranger, a hunched figure smeared with filth, but her eyes burned with the fire of Evelyn Carter, the woman who'd toppled giants. Victor thought he'd won this round, broken her spirit with his petty power play. He had no clue who she was, what she'd survived, or the storm she'd unleash. She peeled a soggy napkin from her sleeve, her resolve hardening. This wasn't the end, it was the spark. She'd record him, expose him, make him pay. But as she trudged back to her cart, a chill crept up her spine. What if he wasn't alone in this? What if the rot ran deeper than one loudmouth thug? She'd find out, even if it tore her apart. Hey folks, what do you think? Should Evelyn have fought back right then, or was playing it smart the better move? Comment number 1. If you think she should have dropped the disguise and taken Victor down, or number 2 if you're rooting for her to keep the long game going. Hit that like button if you're raging at Victor's guts, and subscribe to catch how this explodes next. Was Victor's trash dump a one-off, or is he just warming up? Stick around to see what this monster's got up his sleeve. Evelyn Carter moved through the CarterTech labs like a ghost, her mop swishing across the tiles in rhythmic strokes, the hum of machinery a low drone beneath the pounding in her chest. It was her 4th night as Lena, and the Atlanta air outside hung heavy with the promise of rain, the windows streaked with condensation. Her uniform still carried the faint stink of sour milk from Victor's trash assault the night before, a reminder she couldn't scrub away. Her 62-year-old frame ached, her shoulders knotted from hours of bending, but her mind was a live wire, buzzing with purpose. She'd slipped a tiny phone into her smock pocket, its camera lens peeking out just enough to catch the truth. Victor Grayson's cruelty wasn't a fluke, it was a pattern, and she'd nail him to the wall with proof. She'd built this company to defy men like him, and now she'd use his own venom against him. The lab clock ticked past 11 p.m., the lights casting long shadows as she worked alone, her fake limp dragging her pace. She'd survived worse than this, fought off sneering execs who'd called her dreams a joke, but Victor's racism hit different, raw and personal, a blade aimed at her soul. Last night's spit on the floor stunt still burned in her gut, a humiliation she'd choked down for the mission. Tonight, she'd be ready. She adjusted the phone, her fingers steady despite the tremor she faked, and kept scrubbing, the floor already flawless. The lab door creaked open, and her pulse spiked. Victor lumbered in, his hulking frame filling the space, his pale eyes glinting with that familiar malice. He carried no coffee this time, just a clipboard, but his smirk said he was hunting for trouble. "Lena!" he barked, his voice a gravelly taunt. "You still here? Thought you'd quit after last night. Guess your kind's too dumb to know when to run." Evelyn kept her head down, her wig itching against her scalp, and rasped, "Just doing my job, sir." She hit record on the phone, the faint click masked by the mop's slosh. Victor snorted, stepping closer, his boots scuffing her clean floor. "Your job? You're a walking mess. Look at this." He kicked a trash can, sending crumpled paper and a soda can skittering across the tiles, the aluminum clanging loud in the quiet. "Clean it up and don't miss a speck or I'll have you out by morning." She knelt, her knees protesting, and gathered the debris, the camera catching his every move. He loomed over her, his shadow swallowing her small form, and chuckled. "Pathetic. No wonder you people stay at the bottom, can't even keep a lab straight." The words dripped with racial venom, each syllable a brick in the wall of evidence she was building. She finished, standing slow, her limp exaggerated, and Victor's grin widened. "Not bad for an old hag. Let's test you again." He snatched a beaker from a counter, sloshed water on the floor, and pointed. "Wipe it up! Now!" She did, her rag soaking through, the phone capturing his glee as he paced, barking orders. "Faster, Lena! You're slower than a dead mule!" She complied, her heart pounding with a mix of rage and triumph. This was gold, undeniable proof of his abuse, his racism laid bare. She'd send it to Marcus anonymously, let him see what his silence had bred. Victor finally swaggered out, tossing a final jab over his shoulder. "Keep up, or you're done." The door slammed, and Evelyn stopped the recording, her breath shaky with adrenaline. She'd got him. This was her ticket to justice. Back, in the locker room, she uploaded the clip to a burner email, her fingers flying over the screen, and sent it to Marcus with a vague note. "Your ops guy's a problem. Fix it." She slipped out into the humid night, her smock swapped for a plain jacket, her mind buzzing. Marcus was sharp, he'd act fast, and Victor would be gone by dawn. She slept fitfully, the stink of trash lingering in her dreams, but woke to a text from a trusted ex-colleague. "Victor's out," CEO canned him. Evelyn's chest swelled with smug satisfaction as she shuffled into CarterTech that evening, her mop in hand, her disguise intact. The halls buzzed with whispers, cleaners nodding at her with faint relief. She'd done it, struck a blow without breaking cover. Victor's office sat dark, his nameplate gone, and she allowed herself a tight smile. One racist down, her company a step cleaner. She started her shift, her mop cutting fresh paths, her spirit lighter than it'd been in days. The lab was quiet, the air cool against her skin, when footsteps echoed down the hall, sharp and purposeful. Evelyn tensed, her instincts flaring, and turned as the door swung open. Victor Grayson strode in, his hulking frame backlit by the corridor's glow, his smirk wider than ever. Her stomach dropped, a cold sweat prickling her neck. He wasn't gone. He was here, clipboard in hand, his pale eyes locking onto her with a predator's gleam. "Miss me, Lena?" he drawled, stepping close enough for her to smell his cheap cologne. "HR says it was a mix-up. Laura Hensley's got my back. You didn't think I'd go that easy, did you?" Evelyn's mind reeled, her victory crumbling like ash. Laura Hensley, the HR head, a cold-eyed white woman with a reputation for shielding power players. She'd undone Marcus's call in hours, turned Evelyn's win to dust. Victor tossed the clipboard onto a counter, the clatter jarring her nerves, and leaned in, his voice dropping to a menacing hiss. "Someone snitched, didn't they? Sent a little video. I'm betting it was you, old hag." He didn't wait for a reply, just grabbed her cart and flipped it, mops and bottles crashing to the floor, bleach splashing across her sneakers. She stumbled back, her fake limp faltering, her heart slamming against her ribs. He stepped over, the wreckage, his boots crunching glass, and loomed over her, his breath hot on her face. "You're gonna regret that. I run this shift and you're nothing here. Clean this up and don't try me again." He kicked a broom at her feet and stalked out, his laughter echoing down the hall, a sound that curdled her blood. Evelyn stood frozen, the lab a chaos of spilled supplies, her evidence backfiring in her face. She'd been so sure, so smug, thinking Marcus's firing would stick. But Laura's interference, Victor's reinstatement, it was a gut punch. A neon sign that the rot went deeper than one loudmouth. She dropped to her knees, gathering shattered plastic, her hands trembling with fury and dread. The phone in her pocket felt heavy, useless now, her plan unraveling. Victor wasn't just a bully, he was protected. A cog in a machine she hadn't mapped yet. She'd underestimated him, and he'd sniffed her out, turned her strike into his ammo. The bleach stung her fingers, the mess a mirror of her fractured hope. She'd thought she could fix this quietly, but quiet wasn't cutting it. Victor's threat hung over her, a noose tightening, and she knew he'd come harder now, his racism sharpened by revenge. She righted the cart, her movements slow, her mind racing. Marcus had acted, but not strong enough, not fast enough. Laura Hensley's name burned in her skull, a new target, a puppet master pulling strings. Evelyn's evidence had sparked a war, not a win, and Victor's gloating face told her he'd relish every blow. She finished cleaning, the lab pristine, again, but her spirit was a storm, rage and fear swirling. This wasn't the end, it was an escalation. a sign the fight was bigger than she'd dreamed. She'd record again, dig deeper, but Victor's whisper echoed in her ears. "You snitched, didn't you?" He was onto her, and the next hit would be brutal. She left the lab, her limp heavier, her resolve stealing. What had Laura seen in that video to save him? What was she hiding? The answers were out there, and Evelyn would claw them free even if it broke her. Evelyn Carter shuffled into the CarterTech custodial break room, the air thick with the stale scent of burnt coffee and damp rags, her mop trailing behind her like a weary soldier. It was her 6th night as Lena, and the Atlanta sky outside churned, with dark clouds, a storm brewing that matched the turmoil in her chest. Her 62-year-old body groaned under the weight of her disguise, her back stiff from nights of scrubbing, her hands chapped from bleach. Victor Grayson's reinstatement. Last night still gnawed at her. Laura Hensley's betrayal a fresh wound. She'd thought her video would end him, but he'd slithered back, stronger, angrier, his threat ringing in her ears. "You snitched, didn't you?" Now, she moved cautious, her phone tucked in her smock, recording off for now, her eyes scanning for the next blow. She'd built this company to defy hate, but hate was winning, and she was its punching bag. The break room buzzed with low chatter. A dozen cleaners sprawled across chipped tables, their uniforms wrinkled from long shifts. Most were black or Latino, faces etched with exhaustion, eyes avoiding hers as she limped in. She'd felt their coldness before, a quiet distance, but tonight it was sharper, a wall she couldn't breach. She set her mop against the wall, easing onto a plastic chair, when a voice cut through the hum. "Heard you've been causing trouble, Lena." It was Carla, a wiry black woman with tight braids, her tone icy as she leaned across the table. Evelyn frowned, her pulse ticking up. "Trouble?" she rasped, keeping her cover. Carla smirked, glancing at the others. "Victor says you stole supplies, got caught on camera. That why he's pissed? You making us all look bad?" Evelyn's stomach sank, a cold realization dawning. Victor had spread lies, poisoned the crew against her. She shook her head, her wig shifting slightly. "That's not true. I didn't steal anything." But the room shifted, eyes narrowing, murmurs rippling. A stocky Latino man, Miguel, scoffed from the corner. "Victor don't lie. You're the new one, always sneaking around. Bet you snitched too." The accusation landed like a brick, her breath catching. She'd sent that video to save them, not sell them out. But Victor had twisted it, turned her into the enemy. Before she could speak, Carla stood, knocking her chair back, and flicked a crumpled napkin at Evelyn's chest. "Keep your sticky fingers off our stuff, traitor." The room erupted, small acts of spite flaring fast. Miguel accidentally bumped her shoulder as he passed, sending her staggering, her fake limp faltering. A young black woman, Tasha, tripped her with a broom handle, snickering as Evelyn's knees hit the floor, pain shooting up her legs. She scrambled up, her heart pounding, the mob closing in with glares and whispers. Victor's lies had worked, flipped her allies into foes, her race no shield against his cunning. She grabbed her mop, retreating to the door when it swung open. Victor loomed there, his hulking frame blocking her escape, his pale eyes glinting with triumph. "Problems, Lena?" he drawled, folding his arms. "Told him you're a thief. Looks like they believe me." He stepped aside, letting her limp past, his grin a silent promise of worse to come. Evelyn fled to the labs, her chest tight, her mind spinning. She'd underestimated Victor's reach, his ability to turn her own people against her. She started, scrubbing, the monotony a lifeline, when she noticed a sink leaking in the corner. It was a small fix, a loose pipe she could tighten, a chance to win them back. She grabbed a wrench from her cart, her hands steady despite the ache, and knelt, twisting until the drip stopped. She stood, wiping sweat from her brow, a flicker of hope sparking. Maybe this would show them she wasn't the villain, that she cared. She limped back to the break room at shift's end, her head high, ready to prove herself. "Fix the sink," she rasped to Carla, offering a faint smile. Carla's eyes flickered, a nod forming, when Tasha piped up. "Good for you. Snitch, don't mean nothing." The hope died fast. That night, As Evelyn mopped the 14th floor lab, the lights flickered, and a crash echoed from the hall. She peeked out, her pulse spiking, and saw Carla and Miguel hauling buckets, their faces grim. They vanished around a corner, and she returned to her work, unease prickling her spine. Minutes later, a flood roared in, water gushing across the lab, soaking her sneakers, swirling with soap and grime. Equipment sparked, alarms blaring, and she stumbled back, her mop useless against the tide. Carla burst in, pointing. "Look, what you did, Lena? You messed with the pipes." Evelyn gaped, her voice lost in the chaos. She'd fixed the sink, not broken it. This was sabotage, a setup, and the crew had turned it on her. Victor stormed in, his boots splashing, his roar cutting through the noise. "What the hell, Lena? You flooded my lab?" She shook her head, water dripping from her wig, but he grabbed her arm, yanking her toward the door. "Security, now!" Two guards barreled in, burly white men in black uniforms, their faces blank with authority. Carla and Miguel hung back, smirking, their betrayal complete. The taller guard, his badge reading Daniels, sneered down at her. "Heard your trouble. Black thief, huh?" Evelyn's blood ran cold, the racial jab a knife twist. Victor shoved her forward. "She wrecked the place. Deal with her." Daniels gripped her shoulder, his fingers digging in, and dragged her to the hall, the second guard, Pierce, flanking her. They hauled her to a stairwell, the concrete echoing their steps, and Daniels slammed her against the wall, her cheek scraping rough stone. "Thieves don't last here," he growled, his knee jabbing her spine. Pierce rifled her pockets, tossing, her phone to the floor, the screen cracking. "No proof now, huh?" he taunted, stomping it under his boot. Pain flared as Daniels twisted her arm, her 62-year-old joints screaming, and she bit back a cry, her cover teetering. "I didn't do it," she rasped, but Pierce laughed. "Sure, and I'm the CEO. You people always lie." They roughed her up, fists thudding into her ribs, her breath hitching as bruises bloomed. She crumpled, her fake limp real now, and they left her sprawled, Daniel spitting, "Stay out of trouble, trash." Evelyn lay there, the stairwell cold and silent, her body a map of pain, her spirit fraying. Victor had turned the crew, staged the flood, and sicked security on her, all in one night. Her phone was smashed, her evidence lost, her allies gone. She'd thought she could outsmart him, but he'd outplayed her, used her race as a weapon to isolate her. She dragged herself up, her uniform soaked, her wig askew, and limped to the locker room, each step a battle. The cleaners avoided her gaze as she passed, their silence deafening. She'd fixed that sink to prove something, but they'd drowned her for it, bought Victor's lies hook, line, and sinker. Her chest ached, not just from the blows but from the betrayal, a wound deeper than fists could reach. She peeled off her smock, her hands shaking, and stared at her reflection in a cracked mirror. Bruises darkened her jaw, her eyes hollow with exhaustion, but a fire still flickered there. Victor thought he'd broken her, turned her own people into his mob, but he'd misjudged her steel. She'd built CarterTech from nothing, faced worse than this, and she wouldn't fold now. Security's assault was a new low, a sign the rot wasn't just Victor, it was systemic, a machine grinding her down. She'd lost her phone, her proof, but not her will. She slipped out into the stormy night, rain lashing her face, her resolve hardening. Victor had won this round, but she'd strike back, find a crack in his armor. What had he promised the crew to flip them so fast? What was his next move? She'd dig until she knew, even if it killed her. Evelyn Carter limped through the CarterTech labs, her mop dragging a sluggish path across the tiles, the sting of fresh bruises pulsing under her soaked uniform. It was her 8th night as Lena, and the Atlanta rain hammered the windows, a relentless drumbeat that mirrored the ache in her 62-year-old bones. Her ribs throbbed from security's fists last night, her jaw tender where concrete had scraped it raw. Victor Grayson's mob had turned on her, flooded a lab, and pinned it on her, their betrayal a knife twisted by his lies. She'd built this company to lift people up, not crush them, but now she was the outcast, her own creation a battlefield. Her cracked phone was gone, her evidence drowned, but her eyes burned with a stubborn fire. She'd survived worse, and she'd find a way through this, even if it meant crawling. The lab was a tomb of steel and glass, the air sharp with antiseptic, when a shadow flickered near the sinks. Evelyn tensed, her grip tightening on the mop, expecting Victor's hulking frame, but a lean figure stepped into the light. Jamal Harris, a young black janitor barely 25, his lanky arms pushing a broom, his face tight with exhaustion. She'd seen him before, head down, dodging Victor's barbs, but tonight his brown eyes met hers, wary yet curious. He paused, sweeping slow, and muttered, "You okay, Lena? Heard what they did? Ain't right." His voice was soft, a lifeline in the hostile quiet, and Evelyn's guard eased a fraction. "Been better," she rasped, her fake limp dragging as she edged closer. "You know Victor's a monster. Why'd they turn?" Jamal glanced around, his broom stilled, and leaned in, his whisper rough with fear. "He's got 'em scared. Says he'll fire anyone who don't play along. Been shaking us down too, taking cash from our checks. Calls it protection." Evelyn's pulse spiked, a new thread of rot unraveling. Extortion, on top of racism, a parasite bleeding her people dry. She nodded, her mind clicking. "You got proof?" Jamal hesitated, then pulled a crumpled receipt from his pocket, a scribbled note of $50 owed to Victor. "This enough?" She took it, her fingers brushing his, a spark of trust igniting. "It's a start. We can nail him together." Jamal's eyes widened, a mix of hope and dread. But he nodded, a silent pact sealed. They met in the break room at midnight, the space empty, save for the buzz of a dying vending machine. Evelyn slipped him a new burner phone, her hand steady, despite the pain, and they planned. "Catch him in the act," she whispered, her wig itching as she leaned close. "He shakes someone down. We record it." Jamal agreed, his jaw set, and they split, her heart thudding with a fragile optimism. 2 nights later, she hid in a storage closet, the phone's lens peeking through a crack as Jamal swept the hall. Victor stormed in, his hulking frame dwarfing. A trembling cleaner, Rosa, a petite Latina with shaking hands. "Pay up or you're out," he growled, snatching a wad of bills from her apron. Evelyn's camera rolled, the audio crisp, Victor's greed laid bare. Rosa scurried off, and Jamal slipped away, his broom clattering as a signal. Evelyn uploaded the clip that dawn, her fingers flying over the burner's keys, sending it to Marcus with a note. "Your ops guy's a crook. End him." She limped into CarterTech that evening, her uniform damp from the storm, her spirit buoyed. Whispers hummed through the halls, Victor's office dark again, a memo pinned to the board. Victor Grayson suspended, effective immediately. She found Jamal in the lab, his grin faint but real. "CEO did it, Lena. We got him." She nodded, a tight smile breaking through her exhaustion. They'd struck a blow, a real one this time, and she felt the weight lift, a glimmer of hope, piercing the gloom. She mopped with a lighter step, her bruises fading into the background, thinking maybe, just maybe, they'd turned the tide. Victor was out, her evidence had stuck, and Jamal was her anchor in this mess. The lab clock ticked past 10 p.m., the rain a steady roar, when a scream shattered the quiet. Evelyn dropped her mop, her pulse spiking, and bolted to the hall, her fake limp forgotten. Jamal's voice, raw with panic, echoed from the parking lot below. She raced to a window, her breath fogging the glass, and saw Victor's hulking silhouette in the lot, a tire iron gleaming in his fist. Jamal sprawled on the asphalt, blood pooling under his head, his lanky frame limp as Victor loomed over him, roaring, "You set me up, punk!" Evelyn's heart seized, her victory imploding. She sprinted to the stairs, her 62-year-old legs burning, and burst outside, rain lashing her face. Victor spun, his pale eyes locking onto her, his grin a slash of menace. "You too, Lena." He swung the iron, missing her by inches, and she stumbled back, her sneakers slipping on wet pavement. Jamal groaned, alive but battered, and Victor kicked him once more, a sickening thud against his ribs. "Tell your snitch friend this ain't over," he snarled, then tossed a soaked note at Evelyn's feet. She snatched it, the ink bleeding, in the rain. "You're next." Victor vanished into the storm, his laughter a ghostly taunt, leaving her kneeling by Jamal, her hands shaking as she checked his pulse. He was breathing, shallow and ragged, his face a mess of cuts and swelling. She called 911 from the burner, her voice steady despite the terror clawing her gut, and cradled him until sirens wailed close. Paramedics hauled him off, his blood staining her uniform, and she stood alone in the lot, the note crumpled in her fist. Her triumph was ash, Victor's suspension a lie he'd shredded with violence. She staggered back inside, her wig dripping, her mind a storm of rage and guilt. Jamal had trusted her, fought with her, and now he was broken for it. Victor wasn't just a bully, he was a beast, unleashed by her strike. His racism now a weapon of blood and bone. She'd sent that video to save them, but it had painted a target on Jamal's back, and hers. Marcus had acted, suspended him. But Victor's reach was longer, darker, a force she hadn't gauged. She sank onto a lab stool, her breath hitching, the note's threat searing her skull. "You're next." He'd come for her, harder, meaner, and she dragged Jamal into the crossfire. Her company wasn't just rotting, it was a war zone, and she'd underestimated the enemy. She'd fix this, get Jamal justice, but Victor's blow told her the fight was far from won. Folks, what's your take on this brutal twist? Comment number 1. If you think Evelyn should have kept Jamal out of her plan, or number 2, if you're cheering her guts to team up and fight. Hit like if Victor's attack has you fuming, and subscribe to see how Evelyn battles back from this blood-soaked mess. Did Victor snap because he's cornered, or is he just getting started? Stay tuned to find out what this monster unleashes next. Evelyn Carter trudged through the CarterTech halls, her mop a heavy burden in her bruised hands, the echo of Jamal's scream still ringing in her ears. It was her 10th night as Lena, and the Atlanta dawn had barely broken, the sky a bruised, purple beyond the rain-streaked windows. Her 62-year-old body was a tapestry of pain, her ribs tender from security's fists, her legs shaky from racing to Jamal's side in the lot. Victor Grayson's tire iron assault had left her ally bloodied and broken. His threat, "You're next," a damp note still crumpled in her pocket. She'd built this company to defy cruelty, but cruelty was winning, and now it had teeth. Her uniform clung to her, soaked from the storm, her wig sagging. But her resolve was iron, forged in the fire of last night's horror. She'd take this higher, to HR, to Laura Hensley, and demand justice, even if it risked her cover. The HR office sat on the 20th floor, a sterile cube of glass and beige carpet, the air thick with the scent of printer ink and power. Evelyn limped in at 8 a.m., her smock swapped for a plain jacket, her fake limp dragging as she approached the desk. Laura Hensley perched behind it, a cold-eyed white woman in her 50s, her blonde hair pulled tight, her sharp features framed by sleek glasses. She'd reinstated Victor after Evelyn's first video, a puppet master shielding his venom, and now Evelyn needed her to act. Laura glanced up, her gaze skimming over her like she was dust, and returned to her laptop. "What do you want?" Her voice was flat, a blade wrapped in silk, and Evelyn squared her shoulders, her rasp steady despite the ache. "I'm Lena, night shift. I need to report something serious. Victor Grayson attacked Jamal Harris last night, beat him with a tire iron. He's in the hospital." Laura's fingers paused on the keys, her head tilting slightly, her eyes narrowing, with a flicker of skepticism. "Attacked? That's a bold claim, Lena." She leaned back, crossing her arms, her glasses glinting under the fluorescence. "You saw this?" Evelyn nodded, her pulse ticking up. "In the parking lot after his suspension. He's out of control, been extorting us too. You need to stop him." She pulled the crumpled receipt from her pocket, Jamal's proof of Victor's shakedowns, and slid it across the desk. Laura picked it up, her manicured nails tapping it, then tossed it aside with a faint sneer. "This? A scribble? Doesn't prove a thing. And Jamal's a troublemaker, always has been. Maybe he started it." Evelyn's gut twisted, her breath catching at the dismissal. "Started it? He's unconscious, Laura. Victor's a racist thug. Targets us 'cause we're Black Latino. I've seen it, lived it." Laura's lips thinned, her gaze icing over, and she leaned forward, her voice dropping to a patronizing hiss. "Listen, Lena, I get you're upset, but you're a cleaner. Your unreliable black memory doesn't hold up against a manager's word. Victor says Jamal swung first, self-defense. No witnesses, no case. Evelyn's blood boiled, the racial jab a slap, Laura's lie a brick wall. That's bull, she snapped, her cover slipping a hair. I was there, he's lying. Laura shrugged, her smirk cold. Then you're lying too. Jamal's fired for violence, case closed. The room spun, Evelyn's fists clenching, her nails biting her palms. Fired? Jamal, her one ally, battered and now jobless, while Victor walked free. Laura tapped her desk, a queen dismissing a peasant, and waved her out. Go back to your mop, Lena. Don't waste my time. Evelyn stood frozen, her heart a drum of rage, but she turned, limping out, the door clicking shut like a guillotine. She'd expected resistance, not this, not a system so rotten it'd shield a monster and bury the victim. Laura wasn't just complicit, she was the architect, a gatekeeper of Victor's reign. Evelyn hit the elevator, her mind racing, her plan in shards. She'd thought HR would be her ace, but it was a trap, and she'd walked right in. She returned that night, her uniform heavy with dread, and found the custodial board updated. Victor Grayson, custodial operations lead. Her stomach dropped, a cold sweat prickling her neck. Promoted. Not just reinstated, elevated. His power doubled after beating Jamal senseless. She grabbed her mop, her hands trembling, and headed to the lot, where a faint stain marked Jamal's blood, a ghost she couldn't erase. Victor waited there, his hulking frame leaning against a truck, his pale eyes glinting with triumph. Lena, he drawled, stepping close, his boots crunching gravel. Heard you whine to HR, didn't work, huh? He pointed to the stain. Clean it. Every drop. That's your boy's mess. She knelt, her rag soaking red, her throat tight with fury, his gloating a weight on her spine. She scrubbed, the blood smearing into rust, Victor's shadow swallowing, her, his chuckle a low rumble. You're mine now, old hag. Whole crew answers to me. He kicked her cart, bottles clattering, and sauntered off, leaving her in the rain-soaked dark. She finished, her knees raw, her spirit fraying, thinking this was rock bottom, the worst he could do. She was wrong. The lab doors swung open hours later, her shift near its end, and 2 cops stormed in, their badges glinting, their faces hard. Lena Carter? The taller one barked, his hand on his holster. She froze, her mop slipping, her real name a jolt. How? You're under arrest. Assault on Victor Grayson. Her mind blanked, panic surging, but she rasped. That's a... Why? The shorter cop, his buzz cut graying, smirked. He says you jumped him in the lot, cracked his head, got bruises to prove it. They grabbed her arms, cuffs snapping tight, her 62-year-old wrists aching under the steel. She stumbled as they dragged her out, Victor watching from the hall, his grin a slash of victory, his fabricated story a noose. Told you, Lena, he called, his voice dripping spite. You're next. The cops hauled her to the squad car, the rain soaking her wig, her cover teetering. She'd reported him, and he'd flipped it, framed her with a lie so smooth it stuck. The precinct loomed ahead, a gray slab in the storm, and she sat in the back, her breath shallow, her ribs screaming from old bruises. The cell was a concrete box, the air sour with sweat and despair, and Evelyn slumped on the bench, her cuffs off but her spirit chained. Laura's dismissal, Victor's promotion, now this, a legal trap sprung from his vengeance. She'd thought she'd hit the bottom, with Jamal's beating, but the system had claws and it was tearing her apart. Her company wasn't just poisoned, it was a machine rigged against her, her race a bullseye for its gears. She'd built CarterTech to defy this, but here she was, caged in her own kingdom, Victor's puppet strings pulling tight. The cops had swallowed his story, no questions, her word trash against his. She curled her fists, her nails digging in, a flicker of steel holding her together. Marcus would bail her, but this wasn't over. Victor had won this round, turned her strike into his checkmate, but she'd claw back, even from a cell. She stared at the bars, her mind churning. Laura's sneer and Victor's gloat flashing in her skull. How deep did this go? Who else was shielding him? She'd find out, expose them. But the cuffs had rattled her. The law's weight a new enemy. Her son's empire was slipping, and she was the only one fighting to save it. Bruised, betrayed, and now behind bars. She'd thought she could trust the system, lean on HR, but it was a mirage. A wall of white faces laughing at her fall. She'd get out, regroup. But Victor's frame-up told her the war was bigger, meaner, and she was running out of moves. The cell door clanged, a guard looming, and she stood, her limp real now, her resolve a blade sharpened by defeat. This wasn't the end. It was a gauntlet, and she'd run it bloody if she had to. Evelyn Carter sat hunched in the dimly lit precinct cell, the cold concrete bench biting into her bruised thighs, the air heavy with the tang of mildew and despair. It was her 11th day as Lena, and the Atlanta storm raged outside, rain slashing. The barred window, a mirror to the chaos in her 62-year-old bones. Her wrists ached from the cuffs, now removed, her ribs a dull throb from security's fists, her jaw still tender from Victor Grayson's fabricated assault charge. He'd framed her, turned her HR plea into a legal noose, and now she was caged. In her own empire, her cover teetering. She'd built CarterTech to defy this, but the system had swallowed her whole. Victor's lies a venom seeping through its veins. Her uniform clung damp to her skin, her wig sagging, but her eyes burned. With a defiant glint, she'd lost Jamal, her evidence, her crew, but not her fight. The cell door clanged open, a guard's gruff voice cutting through the quiet. "Lena Carter, you're out. Someone posted bail." Her pulse spiked, her mind snapping to Marcus. He didn't know her disguise, but he'd traced her somehow, her real name a thread he'd tugged. She stood, her fake limp dragging, and shuffled out, the guard's stare a weight on her back. The precinct lobby buzzed with late-night bustle, and there he was, Marcus Carter, her son, 34, tall and sharp in a tailored suit, his Harvard polish fraying at the edges with worry. His dark eyes locked onto her, confusion flashing, as he took in her bedraggled state, her gray hair a mess under the wig. "Lena?" he said, his voice low, testing. She nodded, her rasp steady. "It's me. We need to talk private." He frowned, sensing more, but led her to his sleek black car, the rain a curtain as they sped away. In his downtown loft, the city lights glinting through floor-to-ceiling windows, Evelyn sank onto a leather couch, her body screaming for rest. Marcus paced, his tie loosened, his gaze darting between anger and concern. "What's going on? Assault? You're a cleaner. Now?" She took a breath, her cover cracking, and pulled off the wig, her silver-streaked hair spilling free. Marcus froze, his jaw dropping, recognition slamming him. "Mom? What the hell?" She held his stare, her voice firm despite the ache. "I'm undercover, Marcus. Your company's rotting. Victor Grayson's a racist thug, beating staff, framing me. I've been Lena to prove it." He sank into a chair, his hands raking his face, shock giving way to guilt. "I suspended him. Twice. Why's he still there?" Evelyn pulled a USB from her jacket, a backup she'd stashed before her phone smashed, and handed it over. "This, time-stamped video, me fixing a sink before he flooded the lab. Proves he lied about the assault." Marcus plugged it into his laptop, the grainy footage flickering to life. Her tightening the pipe, the clock ticking 8 p.m., then the flood hours later, Victor's voice barking blame. His jaw tightened, his fist clenching. "He's done. I'll fire him myself this time." Evelyn exhaled, a flicker of triumph warming her chest. Marcus called his assistant, his tone steel. "Victor Grayson's out, effective now, no appeal." She leaned back, her bruises fading into the background, thinking she'd finally won, that Victor's reign was ash. She was safe for now. She returned to CarterTech that night, her uniform swapped for a fresh one, her limp lightened by hope. The halls buzzed with news. Victor's desk cleared, his nameplate gone, cleaners whispering relief. She mopped the 12th floor lab, her strokes steady, her mind easing. Marcus had acted fast, cut the cancer out, and she could breathe, plan her next move. She'd expose Laura next, dig into HR's rot, but tonight, she savored the win. Clock hit 11 p.m. The building quiet when she stepped into the lot, the rain a faint drizzle now. She'd walk home, clear her head, her son's faith in her a shield. The air was cool, the asphalt slick, when headlights flared, blinding her, a truck roaring close. Evelyn spun, her pulse spiking, but too late. Two figures leapt out, burly, shadows in black hoodies, their faces masked by the dark. Ex-cops, she guessed. Victor's cronies, their moves too precise for street thugs. The taller one, his voice a gravelly snarl, grabbed her arm, wrenching it back. Victor sends his regards, black trash. Pain exploded in her shoulder, her 62-year-old joint screaming, and she stumbled. Her fake limp real now. The second slammed a fist into her gut, air whooshing from her lungs, and she doubled over, gasping. Snitch gets stitches, he growled, his knuckles cracking her jaw, blood flooding her mouth. She hit the ground, gravel biting her palms, her vision swimming. But she clawed at the taller one's leg, defiance flaring. They laughed, a cold, hollow sound, and dragged her across the lot, her sneakers scraping, her body a ragdoll. The taller one yanked her up, slamming her against the truck, her head cracking on metal, stars bursting in her skull. You thought you'd win? He hissed, his fist thudding into her ribs, a sickening crunch echoing. She choked, blood dripping down her chin, her strength fading. The second grabbed her hair, ripping the wig free, and sneered. Look at you, old hag. Done. They tossed her into a ditch, her body rolling down wet earth, mud caking her wounds. The truck roared off, taillights fading, leaving her crumpled, barely conscious, the rain washing blood into the dirt. Evelyn lay there, her breath ragged, pain a tidal wave drowning her senses. Victor wasn't just a thug. He was untouchable, his network a hydra striking from the shadows. She'd thought Marcus's firing would end him, but this ambush, this brutality, it was a declaration. He'd kill before he'd lose. Her chest heaved, her ribs cracked, her face a mask of blood and mud. She'd survived worse, bank denials, patent thefts, but this was primal, a hunt with her as prey. Her son's bailout had freed her, her video had suspended Victor, but safety was a lie, a mirage shredded by fists and gravel. She crawled from the ditch, her hands clawing mud, her spirit a flicker in the dark. She'd live, fight, but Victor's reach was a noose tightening. She staggered to her feet, her uniform torn, her real hair plastered to her skull, and limped toward the city lights, each step a battle. Marcus didn't know, couldn't know, how deep this went, how lethal Victor's wrath could be. She'd thought she'd won, thought the timestamp would bury him, but he'd turned it into her death sentence, his ex-cop muscle a blade she hadn't seen coming. Her breath hitched, blood trickling down her neck, but her mind sharpened, a blade of its own. She'd get to Marcus, warn him, dig into Victor's ties. This wasn't a manager gone rogue, it was a syndicate, and she'd cracked its shell. She reached a gas station, her reflection in the window a ghost, bruised and broken but alive. Victor had hit harder, meaner, but she'd rise, even if it took her last breath. She slumped against the wall, her fingers tracing cracked ribs, her resolve a furnace in her chest. Marcus's firing was a spark, not a kill shot, and Victor's ambush proved he'd burn it all before he'd bow. She'd built CarterTech to defy this, but now it was a war zone, her son blind to the enemy within. She'd escaped this ditch, this beating, but the next strike would be worse, a shadow she couldn't outrun yet. She dialed Marcus from a payphone, her voice a croak, her message simple. Get me, now. He'd come, he'd see. But Victor's cronies told her the fight was bigger, bloodier, and she was running out of lives. She'd strike back, but first, she'd survive, a battered queen plotting in the mud. Evelyn Carter slumped in Marcus's sleek loft, the Atlanta skyline a blur of lights through the rain-streaked windows, her battered body sinking into the leather couch. It was her 12th day as Lena, and her 62-year-old frame was a map of pain, her ribs cracked from Victor Grayson's ex-cop cronies, her face swollen with bruises, blood crusting her split lip. The ditch mud still clung to her torn uniform, her real hair plastered to her skull, the wig lost in the ambush. She'd built CarterTech to defy this brutality, but now it was a war zone, Victor's network a fist that had nearly crushed her. Marcus paced before her, his suit rumpled, his dark eyes wide with shock as he'd scooped her from that gas station, her croaked call a lifeline. "Lena, what happened?" he demanded, his voice tight, his Harvard polish fraying. She clutched, a steaming mug of tea, her hands trembling, and decided to trust him just enough. "I'm Lena, night shift," she rasped, her cover clinging by a thread, her real name too risky to drop yet. "Victor's gone rogue, Marcus. Those weren't random thugs. They were ex-cops, his muscle. Beat me bloody in the lot after you, fired him." She pulled the USB from her jacket, her backup evidence, and slid it across the coffee table, her fingers leaving faint mud streaks. "This proves he framed me, flooded the lab. He's not just a bully, he's running a mob, extorting staff, targeting us 'cause we're Black Latino. You've got to end him for good." Marcus snatched the drive, his jaw clenching as he plugged it into his laptop, the time-stamped video flickering to life. Her fixing the sink, the flood hours later, Victor's lies exposed. His breath hissed out, his fist slamming the table, the mug rattling. "This is insane. He's done, Mom. I mean, Lena. I'll bury him myself." Evelyn's chest warmed, a flicker of hope sparking at his fury, his slip of Mom unnoticed in her haze. He grabbed his phone, his voice steel as he dialed his assistant. "Victor Grayson's fired. Permanent. Lock his access. Notify security. Now." He hung up, turning to her, his eyes fierce. "I'll dig into this, find his ties. You're safe here, Lena. Rest." She nodded, her bruises throbbing, her spirit lifting. Marcus was awake now, her son's resolve a shield she'd forged in him. She sipped the tea, its heat soothing her raw throat, thinking she'd turned the tide. Victor's cronies had hit hard, but this was her win, her evidence his coffin nail. She'd expose Laura next, unravel HR's rot. But tonight she'd breathe, her trust in Marcus a lifeline. She woke at dawn, her body stiff, the couch a poor bed for her battered frame. Marcus was gone, a note on the table. "Meeting the board. Stay put." She limped to CarterTech that evening, her uniform fresh, her limp real now, her hope fragile but alive. The halls hummed with tension, cleaners whispering, Victor's office still dark. She mopped the 14th floor, her stroke slow, when Marcus texted, "He's out. Confirmed." She exhaled, a tight smile breaking through her pain, her victory, solid. She'd confided in him as Lena, and he'd acted, cut Victor loose for good. The lab gleamed under her mop, her spirit steadying, when footsteps echoed, sharp and deliberate. She turned, her pulse ticking up, expecting a cleaner. But Laura Hensley strode in, her cold eyes glinting, flanked by Tom Ridley, the CFO, a slick white man in his 40s, his suit pristine, his smirk oily. "Lena," Laura purred, her voice a blade wrapped in velvet. "You've been busy." Tom crossed his arms, his pale gaze raking her bruises. "Marcus showed us your little video. Impressive but messy." Evelyn froze, her mop dripping, her mind racing. Marcus had vouched. For her, fired Victor, so why were they here? Laura stepped closer, her heels clicking, her sneer sharp. "He wanted Victor gone, but we convinced him it's a PR nightmare. Assault claims, lawsuits, bad press. You're a liability, Lena." Tom chuckled, his voice smooth as poison. "Reinstatement's cleaner. Victor's back, effective now." Marcus agreed. Evelyn's stomach plummeted, her breath catching, betrayal a sledgehammer. Marcus had folded. Her son turned against her, his resolve crushed by these snakes. She gripped the mop, her knuckles whitening, her voice a rasp. "He beat Jamal, ambushed me. You're protecting a thug." Laura shrugged, her glasses glinting. "Business, Lena. Victor's useful, you're not." Tom leaned in, his breath minty with menace. "Stay out of it or you're next." They swept out, leaving her reeling, the lab a spinning cage. She'd trusted Marcus, bared her soul as Lena, and he'd buckled, handed Victor back his crown. She limped to the lot, her chest tight, and saw Victor's truck parked, his hulking frame leaning against it, his pale eyes locking onto her. He grinned, a predator's gleam, and sauntered over, his boots crunching gravel, a new badge glinting. Custodial lead. Her victory was dust. Her son's betrayal a knife in her ribs. Victor stopped inches away, his cologne choking her, and yanked her cart, flipping it with a crash, bottles shattering. "Thought you'd win, Lena," he growled, his voice a low rumble. "Marcus can't save you. I'm untouchable." He pulled a photo from his pocket, tossing it at her feet, and her blood ran cold. It was her, Evelyn Carter, no wig, no disguise, a candid from years back. "I know," scrawled in red, ink across her face. Her cover was blown, her real self exposed, Victor's grin a death knell. "Found this in your locker," he hissed, kicking the wreckage. "Game's up, old lady." He torched the cart with a lighter, flames licking plastic, smoke stinging her eyes, and swaggered off, his laughter a taunt in the dusk. Evelyn stood frozen, the photo trembling in her hand, fire crackling beside her, her world imploding. Marcus had betrayed her. Laura and Tom had twisted him, and Victor knew her truth. His vengeance now personal. She'd built CarterTech to defy this, but her son's weakness, her allies' knives had stripped her bare. The flames danced, a mirror to her rage, her bruises throbbing as she crushed the photo. He'd hit her with fists, now with knowledge, a blow she couldn't dodge. She'd thought she was safe, thought Marcus's firing was final, but this was war, and she was naked in it. She stumbled back, her limp heavy, her resolve a flicker in the smoke. Victor's mob, Laura's shield, Tom's greed. They'd crushed her win, and her son had let them. Hey viewers, how's this gut punch landing? Comment number 1, if you think Marcus should have stuck to his guns and fought for Lena. Or number 2, if you reckon he's too deep in the corporate game to save her. Smash that like if Victor's photo reveal has you shook, and subscribe to catch Evelyn's next move in this brutal showdown. Was Marcus played by Laura and Tom, or did he choose to sell out? Stick around to see how this betrayal twists the knife deeper. Evelyn Carter stood in the smoldering ruins of her torched cart, the Atlanta night thick with the acrid stench of burnt plastic, her bruised hands clutching the photo Victor Grayson had flung at her. It was her 12th night as Lena, and her 62-year-old body trembled, not from cold, but from the seismic shock of her blown cover. The image, her real face, Evelyn Carter, CarterTech's billionaire founder, stared back. "I know," scrawled in red ink, Victor's taunt a grenade that had ripped her disguise apart. She'd built this empire to defy men like him, but now he'd turned it against her. Marcus's betrayal a fresh wound, Laura and Tom's scheming a noose tightening. Her ribs ached from the ex-cop beating, her spirit frayed, but her eyes burned, with a steely resolve. She'd fight, even if it meant facing the world bare. By dawn, the storm broke. Evelyn woke in her small apartment, her real home a secret kept from Marcus, to a phone buzzing with alerts. She grabbed it, her cracked ribs protesting, and saw the headline screaming across X, "Black founder fakes poverty to spy on staff." Her stomach plummeted, her breath catching as she scrolled. Victor had leaked it, twisted it, a viral post, with her photo, wigless, bruised, captioned, "Evelyn Carter, CEO's mom, slumming it as a cleaner to snoop, fraud or freak." The comments exploded, thousands in hours, a mix of shock and venom. Rich lady playing poor, disgusting. Bet she's stealing too. Media pounced, news vans swarming CarterTech's Atlanta HQ, their cameras glinting like vultures' eyes. She'd built this company to prove her worth, and now it was a circus, her legacy trashed by his spite. She limped to the window, the city waking to her ruin, her mind racing. Victor hadn't just exposed her. He'd spun a lie so vile it stuck, her race a punchline in the public's jeer. She'd faced bias before, bank denials, sneering rivals. But this was a tidal wave, her dignity drowned in clicks and shares. Marcus called, his voice a frayed thread. "Mom, what's this? You're..." "Lena, why didn't you tell me?" She gripped the phone, her rasp sharp. "To save your company, Marcus. Victor's a snake, and you let Laura and Tom bring him back." He stammered, guilt choking him. "I didn't know. I'll fix it." She hung up, her trust in him shattered. Her next move, hers alone. She'd strike back, reclaim her name, but the mob was already at her gates. That afternoon, CarterTech's lot erupted. Protesters, egged on by Victor's posts, storming the entrance, their signs jagged with hate. Fire the fake, and rich liars out. Glass shattered as rocks flew, windows splintering, the chaos a roar in her ears. Evelyn watched from a diner across town, her hood up, news feeds live on her phone, her heart sinking. Employees fled, security scrambling, the empire she'd forged crumbling under lies. She'd thought Victor's ambush was his peak, but this, public shaming, this riot, it was a guillotine. She'd lost control, her son's weakness a crack the world exploited. She downed her coffee, her bruises throbbing, and decided, a press conference, her voice, her truth. She'd built CarterTech from nothing, and she'd fight to save it, even if it meant facing the horde. She called a local station, her rasp. From Evelyn Carter, live at 6 p.m., CarterTech steps, I've got proof. They jumped, the scoop too juicy to miss, and she prepped, her real suit crisp, her silver hair free, no disguise now. At 6, she stood on the HQ steps, cameras flashing, the crowd hushed, protesters glaring from the cordon. I'm Evelyn Carter, she began, her voice steady, cutting through the dusk. I founded this company 35 years ago, a black woman with a dream. I went undercover as Lena to root out rot. Victor Grayson's racism, extortion, violence. Here's the truth. She held up the USB, her backup, and played it on a portable screen. The sync fix, the flood, Victor's frame-up, Jamal's beating caught on a lot camera she'd salvaged. Gasps rippled, the crowd shifting, her evidence a hammer cracking his. Lies. She thought she'd won, felt the tide turn, the murmurs softening, reporters scribbling. I'm no fraud, she said, her eyes fierce. I'm a fighter, and Victor's the thief. She stepped down, her chest light, her legacy clawing back from the brink. Marcus met her inside, his face pale, his suit rumpled. Mom, you're incredible. We'll fix this. She nodded, hope flickering, thinking the board would see, act, end Victor's reign. She was wrong. Hours later, Laura Hensley's voice crackled on the news, her cold eyes glinting in a presser of her own. Evelyn Carter's claims are a distraction. We've uncovered embezzlement. Millions missing, traced to her accounts. A forged ledger flashed, numbers Evelyn had never seen, her name scrawled in bold. The board suspended her pending investigation. Evelyn's knees buckled, Marcus catching her, her mind reeling. Embezzlement? Laura had planted it, a dagger forged in HR's shadows, Victor's puppeteer striking from above. The crowd outside roared anew. Thief! Liar! Their faith in, her proof drowned by this lie. She'd built CarterTech to defy this, but Laura's frame-up, Victor's leak, they'd turned her triumph to ash. Marcus cursed, his phone buzzing with board calls, his voice tight. It's fake, Mom. I'll fight it. But the damage was done. Her suspension a public execution. Her name mud in the city she'd shaped. She stumbled to her office now, locked, security barring her, their eyes cold. Orders, ma'am, one muttered, his badge glinting, a pawn in Laura's game. She stood in the lot, rain soaking her suit, her empire slipping through her fingers. Victor emerged from the shadows, his hulking frame looming, his grin a slash of victory. Told you, Evelyn, you're done. He tossed a newspaper at her, feet, the headline screaming her crime, his badge still gleaming, custodial lead. He'd won, not just her beating, but her ruin. Laura's forgery, his final blow. She'd thought the press conference would save her, turn the mob. But this embezzlement lie, this suspension, it was a guillotine she hadn't seen falling. Her chest heaved, her ribs a dull ache, her spirit a flicker in the storm. She'd exposed. Victor, shown the world, but Laura's trap had flipped it, her legacy trashed, her company stolen. She limped away, the crowd's jeers fading, her mind a furnace of rage and strategy. Marcus was blindsided, the board duped, but she'd dig into Laura's books, find the forgery source. She'd built CarterTech from a garage, Faced worse than this, and she'd claw back even from the gutter. Victor's leak had sparked the fire. Laura's lie fanned it, and now she was burned, suspended in her own house. She reached her apartment, her suit dripping, her resolve hardening. The USB was out, her truth public, but this new lie was a beast she'd slay. She'd thought she was safe, thought her evidence would stand. But Victor's mob, Laura's greed, they'd hit harder, meaner. She'd rise, battered but unbroken, a queen plotting in exile, the fight far from over. Evelyn Carter huddled in her small Atlanta apartment, the dim glow of a single lamp casting shadows across the peeling walls, her 62-year-old body a wreck of bruises and resolve. It was her 14th day since starting as Lena, and the icy rain had stopped, leaving a sticky heat that clung to her torn suit. Her ribs throbbed from Victor Grayson's ex-cop beating, her face a patchwork of swelling from the ditch ambush, and now Laura Hensley's embezzlement lie had stripped her of CarterTech, her suspension a public guillotine. She'd built this empire to defy such treachery, but treachery had won, her legacy trashed, her son Marcus a pawn in their game. She clutched a burner phone, her cracked hands trembling, plotting her next move when sirens wailed outside, red and blue lights slashing. Through her blinds, the door burst open, 2 cops storming in, their boots thudding on warped wood, their badges glinting like knives. "Evelyn Carter," the taller one barked, his buzz cut graying, his hand on his holster. "You're under arrest for fraud, millions embezzled, board's orders." Her stomach lurched, her breath catching, Laura's forgery now a legal noose. She stood, her real hair free, no wig to hide behind, and rasped, "It's a lie. I've got proof." The shorter cop smirked, his eyes cold. "Tell it to the judge, lady." They cuffed her, the steel biting her wrists, her 62-year-old joints creaking, and dragged her out, neighbors gawking from cracked doors. Victor waited across the street, his hulking frame leaning on his truck, his pale eyes glinting through the bars of her cell window as she was shoved into the squad car, his grin a taunt. "Told you, Evelyn," he mouthed, a predator savoring the kill. The precinct cell was a gray slab, the air sour with sweat and defeat, and Evelyn slumped on the bench, her cuffs clanking, her mind a storm. Laura's lie had teeth, the boards, suspension now an arrest, her empire a machine grinding her to dust. She'd exposed Victor at the press conference, thought her USB would save her. But this fraud charge, this cage, it was a blow she hadn't braced for. Footsteps echoed, a familiar lanky shadow slipping past the guard, and Jamal Harris appeared, his face still scarred from Victor's tire iron, his brown eyes fierce. "Lena, Evelyn, I heard," he whispered, slipping a key through the bars, his hospital stint not dimming his grit. "Borrowed this, move fast." She grabbed it, her heart pounding, and unlocked the cuffs, her wrists raw but free. They bolted, Jamal's limp matching hers, the precinct a maze of shouts as alarms blared. He'd tracked her arrest on X, risked everything to spring her, and she followed him through a back exit, the Atlanta night swallowing them. "Board's meeting now," he panted, leading her to a stolen bike, its engine rumbling. "You're shot." She nodded, her bruises screaming, and they roared to CarterTech, her mind a blade sharpening. She'd built this place from a garage, faced worse than cuffs, and she'd crashed their game, evidence or not. They ditched the bike a block away, sneaking through a service door, her suit torn, her real self a ghost in her own halls. The boardroom loomed on the 45th floor, and she burst in, Jamal at her back, her voice a roar cutting through their suits and ties. "I'm Evelyn Carter," she bellowed, the 12 board members jolting, their faces a mix of shock and scorn. Marcus stood at the head, his suit crisp, his eyes wide with guilt. "You've got a fraud charge pinned on me, but it's fake. Victor's the thief, Laura's his shield, and you're letting them steal my company." She slammed the USB on the table, her cracked hands trembling, and played it. The sink fix, the flood, Jamal's beating. Snippets of Victor's extortion caught on Jamal's phone. "This is your rot, not mine." The room buzzed, murmurs rippling, and Marcus stepped forward, his voice shaky. "Mom, I didn't know. I'll fix this." A gray-haired board member, Ellen, nodded, her eyes narrowing. "If this holds, Victor's out." Evelyn's chest heaved, hope flickering, her evidence a hammer cracking their lies. She'd escaped, stormed in, thought she'd turned the tide, her truth a spotlight on their greed. Marcus called security, his tone steel. Victor Grayson, immediate termination. She exhaled, her bruises fading into the rush, thinking she'd won, her company clawing back from the brink. Then Tom Ridley, the CFO, stood, his slick white frame oozing calm, his voice smooth as oil. "Hold on, Marcus. We've got a problem." He tossed a folder onto the table, papers spilling, bank records, bribes to board members, millions funneled through shell accounts, all signed Evelyn Carter. "She paid us off," he said, his smirk a blade. "Kept Victor in play. We reinstated him to protect her." The room froze, Evelyn's breath stopping, her mind reeling. Forged, all of it. Laura's lie twisted deeper. Tom's play, a guillotine. Ellen snatched a page, her face hardening. "This is damning, Evelyn." Marcus gaped, his faith cracking, and Evelyn roared, "It's fake, they're framing me." But Tom leaned back, his eyes glinting. "Prove it from jail. Board votes now. Evelyn's banned from CarterTech, effective immediately." Hands rose, 8-4. Marcus is staying down, his face pale with betrayal. Security stormed in, burly men in black, and dragged her out, her heels scraping marble, Jamal shouting, "She's innocent!" The doors slammed, her empire locking her out. Tom's bribery lie her exile. Evelyn stumbled into the lot, her suit shredded, her ribs a dull ache. Jamal at her side, his limp heavy. Victor waited by his truck, his hulking frame a shadow, his grin a slash of triumph. "Nice try, Evelyn," he called, tossing a coin at her feet, his badge gleaming. "You're banned. I'm king." He'd won. Not just her arrest, but her banishment. Tom's forged bribes a checkmate she hadn't seen. She'd escaped the cell, crashed the board, thought her evidence would save her. But this lie, this vote, it was a grave she couldn't climb from. Her chest burned, her spirit a flicker in the dusk. Marcus's silence a knife in her gut. She'd built CarterTech to defy this, but Tom's greed, Laura's venom, Victor's fist, they'd buried her alive. She limped away, Jamal's arm steadying her, the city lights blurring through tears she wouldn't shed. The USB was out, her truth heard, but Tom's play had flipped it, her legacy a smoking ruin. She'd thought she'd hit bottom with the arrest, but this ban, this exile, it was a breaking point. Her company stolen by liars she'd trusted. She reached a bus stop, her breath ragged, her resolve a ember in the ash. Marcus was lost. The board bought, but she'd dig into Tom's books, find the forgery's root. She'd survived worse, built from nothing, and she'd claw back, even from this abyss. Victor's coin glinted in the dirt, a taunt she'd turned to steel. She'd rise, hunted but unbroken, a queen plotting in the dark. Evelyn Carter crouched in the dim glow of a cheap motel room, the Atlanta skyline a faint smear through cracked blinds, her 62-year-old body a battered shell clinging to resolve. It was her 16th day since starting as Lena, and her ribs ached from Victor Grayson's ex-cop beating, her face a map of bruises from the ditch ambush, her spirit raw from her banishment by CarterTech's board. She'd built this empire to defy such treachery, but Tom Ridley's forged bribes and Laura Hensley's embezzlement lie had stripped it away, her son Marcus a silent pawn in their game. She sat on a lumpy bed, her torn suit swapped for thrift store jeans, her silver hair free, a burner laptop humming as Jamal Harris, his face still scarred from Victor's tire iron, hacked into encrypted files. "Found something," he muttered, his lanky frame hunched, his brown eyes glinting. Tom and Laura, moving billions to a rival firm. Victor's their front. Her pulse spiked, her breath catching, a thread of rot unraveling. She leaned in, her cracked hands steady, the screen glowing with bank records. Millions siphoned from CarterTech, funneled through a shell company, Grayson Biotech, Victor's name scrawled in bold. "They're gutting my company," she rasped, her voice a blade. "Selling it to competitors for profit." Jamal nodded, his fingers flying. "Meeting tomorrow off-site, old warehouse on Peachtree. They're finalizing it." She'd built CarterTech from a garage, faced worse than this, and now she'd infiltrate, record, end them. She grabbed a backpack, stuffing it with a mini camera and recorder, her mind a furnace. We crash it, Jamal, evidence or bust. He grinned, a flicker of defiance, and they planned, her banishment a spark igniting this final stand. The next night, Evelyn slipped through Atlanta's industrial sprawl, the warehouse a rusted hulk under a moonless sky, its windows dark, its air thick with oil and decay. She wore a black hoodie, her limp real now, Jamal at her side, his stolen bike stashed a block back. They crept through a side door, the metal groaning, and hid behind crates, the space a cavern of shadows and echoes. Voices drifted from a lit corner, sharp and tense, and she edged closer, her camera rolling, its lens catching Laura's cold silhouette, Tom's slick frame, and Victor's hulking mass, a table strewn with papers between them. Billions locked. In, Tom said, his voice smooth. Grayson Biotech's live tomorrow. CarterTech's done. Laura smirked, her glasses glinting. Evelyn's out. Marcus is weak. We win. Evelyn's blood boiled, her grip tightening, the recorder purring as Victor growled, "I'll run it. Bleed 'em dry. Money's all that matters, not her equality crap." She'd built this company to defy this, and now they confessed. Her, evidence a noose tightening. She shifted, her sneaker scraping dust, and Victor's head snapped up, his pale eyes piercing the dark. "Someone's here," he barked, lunging from the table, his boots thudding. She froze, her heart slamming, Jamal tugging her back, but Victor's shadow loomed, his tire iron gleaming, a predator unleashed. "Evelyn!" he roared, spotting her, his grin a slash of rage. "Thought you'd stay down." He swung, the iron whistling, and she ducked, wood splintering beside her, Jamal shoving a crate to block him. "Run!" he yelled, but Victor charged, his bulk crashing through, his fist cracking Jamal's jaw, sending him sprawling. Evelyn bolted, her camera clutched, her ribs screaming, but Victor grabbed her arm, wrenching it back, pain exploding in her shoulder. "You're dead," he snarled, pistol whipping her temple, stars bursting in her skull. She crumpled, blood trickling down her face, her 62-year-old body folding. But she clutched the recorder, defiance flaring. He dragged her to a back room, a maze of rust and oil drums, and tossed her inside, her knees hitting concrete, her gear skidding. Victor loomed, his lighter flicking, and torched a pile of rags, flames licking up fast, smoke choking the air. "Accident," he sneered, locking the door, the fire spreading, a trap to stage her death. Evelyn coughed, her lungs burning, her vision blurring, the heat searing her skin. She'd thought she'd lost everything with the ban, but this inferno, it was Victor's endgame. Laura and Tom's silence bought with her ashes. She crawled, her hands clawing concrete, the recorder still in her grip, her spirit a flicker in the blaze. The flames roared, drums popping, and she found a rusted vent, her cracked fingers prying it loose, her body screaming as she squeezed through, smoke searing her throat. She tumbled outside, the cool night a shock, her skin singed, her hair smoldering, the warehouse a glowing hell behind her. Jamal staggered up, blood on his face, his voice hoarse. "You okay?" She nodded, coughing, the recorder trembling. In her hand, the camera cracked but intact. "Got it," she rasped, her resolve steel. They limped to a gas station, her burner phone alive, and she uploaded the footage online. X, news sites, everywhere, her shaky voice narrating. "This is Evelyn Carter, Tom Ridley, Laura Hensley, Victor Grayson, stealing CarterTech. Here's proof." The confession played, their voices clear, the fire a backdrop, and she hit send, her breath ragged, her victory a lifeline. Sirens wailed, feds swarming the warehouse, cuffs snapping on Tom and Laura as they fled. Victor's truck peeling out, too late. Evelyn sank onto a curb, her body a wreck. Jamal beside her, the upload viral in minutes. Thousands of views spiking. She'd thought she'd lost it all. Arrest, banishment, beatings. But this evidence, this drop, it was a hammer smashing their lies. She'd built CarterTech to defy this, and now the world saw, her truth ablaze brighter than Victor's fire. Feds stormed in, their radios crackling, Tom's slick face pale in cuffs, Laura's cold eyes darting, but Victor was gone, his escape a shadow in the chaos. She'd escaped the inferno, turned their trap into her triumph, but the cost was etched in her burns, her allies' blood. Her chest heaved, her spirit a ember in the ash, thinking she'd won. Ended them. Her company saved. She limped away, Jamal's arm steadying her, the city lights flickering through smoke, her mind a storm of rage and relief. The footage was out, their greed exposed, feds closing in. But Victor's flight gnawed at her, a loose end sharper than the flames. She'd infiltrated, recorded, survived, thought this was the end. But his escape, his tire iron, it was a promise of more. She reached a diner, her breath shallow, her resolve hardening. Marcus would see, the board would buckle, but Victor's shadow loomed, a beast she'd wounded, not killed. She'd built CarterTech from nothing, faced worse than fire, and she'd finish this, even if it took her last stand. The upload ticked higher, millions now, her truth a tidal wave, but the war wasn't over, not yet. Evelyn Carter sat on a cracked diner stool, the Atlanta dawn painting the sky a bruised orange through grimy windows, her 62-year-old body a tapestry of scars and resilience. It was her 17th day since starting as Lena, and her ribs, pulsed with pain from Victor Grayson's ex-cop beating, her skin raw from the warehouse fire she'd barely escaped, her spirit a battered flame still burning. She'd built CarterTech to defy this chaos, and last night's upload, Tom Ridley, Laura Hensley, and Victor confessing their billion-dollar theft, had gone viral, millions of views crashing their lies. Her burner phone buzzed with news alerts. Feds raiding CarterTech, cuffs snapping on Tom and Laura as they fled the smoldering warehouse, their faces pale in grainy footage. She sipped bitter coffee, her cracked hands steady, Jamal Harris beside her, his scarred face grim but triumphant, his lanky frame hunched over a donut. They'd won, or so she thought. The diner TV blared, a news anchor's voice cutting through the clatter of plates. CarterTech scandal rocks Atlanta. CFO Tom Ridley and HR head Laura Hensley arrested for embezzlement, linked to a rival firm, Grayson Biotech. Evidence from founder Evelyn Carter's undercover sting sparked the federal sweep. Footage rolled. Tom in a suit, head down, Laura's cold eyes darting, both cuffed and shoved into vans. Evelyn's chest tightened, a mix of relief and exhaustion washing over her, her burns itching under her thrift store hoodie. She'd exposed them, turned Victor's fire trap into their grave, her empire clawing back from the brink. Jamal nudged her, his voice low. "They're done, Evelyn. You did it." She nodded, her silver hair free, her resolve a quiet ember, but Victor's absence gnawed at her. His truck had peeled out, a shadow uncaught. Marcus burst through the diner door, his tailored suit wrinkled, his dark eyes wild with shame and desperation, the 34-year-old CEO a shadow of his Harvard Polish. He slid into the booth, his hands trembling, his voice a plea. "Mom, I saw the video. Tom, Laura, Victor. I didn't know. I swear. I was weak. Let them play me. Come, back, take the helm. The board's begging, I'm begging." Evelyn stared at him. Her son, the boy she'd raised on tales of grit, now humbled by her sacrifice. Her ribs ached, her banishment still raw, his betrayal a scar she couldn't unsee. She'd built CarterTech for him, handed him her dream, and he'd faltered, let Tom and Laura bury her. She sipped her coffee, her rasp steady. "You had your shot, Marcus. I fought for this, bled for it. You didn't." He leaned closer, his eyes glistening, his words tumbling fast. "I'll step down, Mom. You're the soul of CarterTech, always were. The feds are cleaning house. The company's yours again. Please." She set the mug down, her cracked hands folding, her mind a storm. She'd survived Victor's fists, Laura's lies, Tom's greed, thought her upload would end it, restore her throne. But Marcus's plea, his shame, it shifted something. A crack in her armor. She'd built this empire from a garage, defied a world that scorned her blackness, her womanhood, and now it knelt, begging her return. She could take it, rebuild it, her legacy intact. Then she looked at Jamal, his scarred face a mirror of her fight, his quiet strength a spark she'd lit. She exhaled, her decision a blade cutting clean. "No, Marcus," she said, her voice firm, rising from the booth, her limp heavy but sure. "I'm done. CarterTech's not mine anymore." He gaped, his jaw slack, as she pulled a crumpled contract from her backpack, scrawled in her hand. "At the motel last night. I sold it. $1 to Jamal Harris. He's the whistleblower, the hero. He'll run it better than we ever did." Jamal froze, his donut dropping, his brown eyes wide with shock. "Evelyn, what?" She gripped his shoulder, her gaze fierce. "You fought with me, bled with me. It's yours now, a new start. Make it what I dreamed. Fair, strong, real." Marcus stammered, "Mom, you can't. This is your life." She turned away, her ribs a dull ache, her spirit free. "Was my life. Now it's his." She limped to the door, the diner's hum fading, her son's pleas a distant echo. She'd built CarterTech to defy this world, and she'd torn it down to save it. Her upload a tidal wave that drowned the rot. Jamal took the contract, his hands trembling, a king crowned in her shadow, his scars a badge of their war. She stepped into the dawn, the city waking around her, her breath shallow but calm. She'd thought she'd reclaim her throne, sit as CEO again, but this sale, this gift, it was a reversal, a power flip that defied their greed. The feds had Tom and Laura, CarterTech was Jamal's, and she was out, scarred but unshackled, her legacy a torch passed in the ash. The TV flickered, a breaking news banner slicing through the chatter. Victor Grayson arrested in warehouse sting, linked to CarterTech theft. Evelyn paused, her hand on the door, her pulse spiking as footage rolled. Victor's hulking, frame in cuffs, his pale eyes glaring, feds swarming his truck a mile from the blaze. She exhaled, a tight smile breaking through her pain, thinking it was over, the beast caged, her evidence his chains. She walked on, the sun warming her burns, her steps light for the first time in weeks. She'd survived his fists, his fire, thought this arrest sealed it, her fight won. She reached a park bench, her body sinking, her mind easing when her burner buzzed, a text from an old contact. "Victor escaped. Prison break, 2 hours ago. He's coming." Her stomach dropped, her breath freezing, the dawn turning cold. Victor, free, his grin a ghost in her skull, his tire iron a promise unfulfilled. She'd built CarterTech to defy this, sold it to Jamal to bury it, thought her upload and his arrest were the end. But this twist, this escape, it was a claw raking her victory raw. Marcus's plea echoed, Jamal's reign loomed. But Victor's flight was a shadow she couldn't outrun, a vow of revenge sharper than steel. She clutched the phone, her cracked hands trembling, her spirit a flicker in the wind. She'd refused the throne, handed it off, thought she'd walked away clean. But Victor's break flipped it. A war reignited when she'd laid down her sword. She stood, her limp heavy, the city sprawling before her, her mind a furnace of rage and strategy. Jamal had CarterTech, Marcus had his shame. But Victor had her scent, a hunter loose with her name on his lips. She'd survived worse, built from nothing, and she'd face him, even from this exile. The feds were scrambling, news buzzing with his escape, but she was alone, scarred, a queen without a castle. She tossed the burner into a trash can, her breath steadying, her resolve a blade in the dusk. She'd thought it was over, her sale a final act, but Victor's freedom was a gauntlet, a fight she couldn't dodge. She walked into the city, her steps a drumbeat, her war far from won, a shocking reversal leaving her hunted, unbroken, ready. Evelyn Carter's journey in this gripping tale unveils profound lessons about resilience, betrayal, and the fight against systemic injustice. Her transformation from a billionaire founder to a battered cleaner exposes the raw truth that power doesn't shield you from prejudice. It can amplify it. Evelyn faced racism head-on, enduring Victor Grayson's cruelty, Laura Hensley's deceit, and Tom Ridley's greed, yet her spirit never broke. This teaches us that strength isn't in titles or wealth, but in the will to stand when everything collapses. Her undercover mission, risking all to save CarterTech, shows that true leadership sacrifices comfort for truth, a lesson for anyone in a position to influence. The betrayal by her son Marcus and the board underscores a harsh reality. Trust can falter under pressure, even from those closest to you. Evelyn's sale of CarterTech to Jamal, a scarred ally, flips the script. Power isn't hoarded, it's passed to those who earn it through loyalty and grit. Her refusal to reclaim her throne after exposing the rot proves that victory isn't always about winning back what's lost, but about redefining justice on your terms. Victor's escape, a chilling twist, reminds us that evil doesn't rest, urging vigilance even in triumph. This story's core lesson is clear. Fighting racism and corruption demands relentless courage, even when the system turns against you. Evelyn's scars are her medals, her legacy a torch for the oppressed. So, what would you do if you uncovered such betrayal in your world? Comment below with your thoughts, hit like if Evelyn's grit inspires you, and subscribe for more tales of defiance. Share this with someone who needs to see resilience in action. Thanks for joining us on this wild ride. May you find strength to face your own battles and never back down from what's right.